Well, hello there. Don't worry about who I am, you'll meet me in a minute. That is, unless of course you don't care about the silly lore of this YouTube channel. If that's the case and you want to just skip ahead to the mean batajos, then you can go directly to the time code on the screen. By the way, I probably should warn you, these shows do get a bit dark at times. Like adults putting children into suggestive situations kind of dark. So if that's something you're not particularly comfortable with, the time codes for when we touch on those things are here, here, and here. Feel free to save them as a screenshot so you know what sections to skip, unless you're one of the few people who's here during the live video premiere. Then you can't skip it all, but that's alright, we'll stick out this nonsense together. Now we've got these pleasantries out of the way, let's get this show on the road.
Hello? 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 Is there anybody out there? Can anybody hear me? Maddie?
Well, there you are. We're looking all over for you. It's about time you joined us.
Who is that? Where am I? What is going on?
Me? Well, that doesn't matter in the slightest. I'm nobody. As for where you are, though, you've entered the white space. Or, I suppose I brought you here rather than you just entering it, but you know what they say. Potato, potato.
What are you talking about? White space? Potato? Nobody has ever said potato like that.
Well, I suppose there's a first time for everything, but seriously? You expect me to believe that you don't know what the white space is? You run a YouTube channel based on DC Comics, but you haven't watched the Doom Patrol yet?
Well, I started, but I'm just super busy right now.
Oh, for the love of God, this just won't do. What, just because Batman's on the 10 means you don't have to pay attention? Well, Batman. Oh my, how do I explain where we are? It's the part of the comic book between the panels. You're still in the book, but not in the story.
Well, that's inconvenient. I kind of had this thing going on with Jay's reviews back home. I mean, I should probably just get back to that.
You just don't get it. The story has already been written. Even if you're here, it'll still play out, but kinda like a case of deja vu.
You've lost me. I still don't really get why I'm here, and where is Maddie, by the way?
Leave it to you people that don't understand simple concepts. Well, if this will make it any easier.
Oh hey, there you are!
What the hell is going on?
Well, from what I understand, we're in a place that's kinda outside continuity, but still part of the story? Kinda like,
Like how you have a podcast on your channel that you'll reference in storyline videos, but don't adhere to as part of the story. Personally, I think it's a little dry, but that Ted guy, he's what stars are made of.
Look man, that all sounds pretty meta, but I don't know what you're talking about. This is all real life.
I can't deal with this today. Look, I brought the two of you here to fix this mess. The timelines just aren't adding up. There's continuity errors everywhere, and try as I might to fix them by moving one thing or another, more things break. So, with the two of you dealing with these things on a regular basis, I tore open a hole in the continuity at the exact moment you would find a continuity error. And now I need you to make sense of the DC Universe streaming timeline, or else there will be consequences.
Well, I just told you a minute ago that I can't do it.
Have you even finished Titans yet? That's fine. I've got notes!
Wait, how do you have that? Are you still in the basement?
Not exactly.
You can't take a true genius out of its element. Now, roll the theme music.
Theme music?
It's Thursday.
Wait, is it even Thursday?
Just do the show.
Right, okay. Back in September 2014, entertainment outlets such as Variety and Deadline began reporting that a Teen Titans project was in the works with TV network TNT. The show was set to be a 1-hour live-action drama that would center on Dick Grayson, the former Robin who emerges from Batman's shadow to become Nightwing and the leader of the fearless band of heroes who include Starfire and Raven. With names like Akiva Goldsman, known for his work on A Beautiful Mind and Batman and Robin, and Mark Hames of Kubo and the Two Strings and Men in Black 2 fame attached to this project, it seemed like it had the potential to be a network hit. But a year and a half later, January 2016 brought news that the show was dead in the water at TNT, with a network representative quoted as saying, "We decided it wasn't where we wanted to go." Given another year and some change, Titans finally got a green light and found its home on the DC Universe streaming service. DC Universe went on to launch in September of 2018, with Titans premiering the following month. February of 2018, press buzz began to spring up with casting announcements stating that Titans would be incorporating characters from DC's Doom Patrol comics. To hardcore fans of the source material, this made sense, seeing as Titans regular Beast Boy first appeared in the Doom Patrol number 99, and as a result had a long-standing history with those characters. A matter of months later, casting announcements began to make the rounds, letting fans know that not only were the Doom Patrol getting a Titans guest appearance, they would be getting their own show, which would follow the events of that episode according to an official press release from DC and Warner Brothers. Now with the inclusion of Cyborg and Crazy Jane, the majority of the cast reprised their roles from the Titans show, with the exception of Niles Calder being recast with former James Bond actor Timothy Dalton. As even more shows for the streaming service began to hit the news cycle, the connective tissue between these two led fans to assume that all the live action shows for DCU would be a shared universe of sorts. However, in September of 2018, when screenwriter Gary Doberman was asked by Slash Film whether or not this would be the case with Swamp Thing, his response was a bit less than conclusive. "I think the opportunity is there if we want to, but it's not mandated. I think we could if in the future it organically works itself out to be that way. I haven't discussed that with the guys from Titans, and they haven't discussed it with us." With the series being prematurely canceled, it seems as though that opportunity has greatly diminished. So for the purposes of our coverage today, we'll just be focusing on the two shows, Titans and Doom Patrol. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. Starting from the absolute earliest point, in Doom Patrol's Hair Patrol, we meet a cave woman by the name of Oyewa. According to Niles, her culture is tens of thousands of years old, as though she had eternal life. Moving from BC to AD, we see this newspaper clipping in Puppet Patrol that says Spanish conquistadors arrived in 1524, very likely in reference to Cristobal de Olid's expedition to Honduras. Cult Patrol tells us that the city of Nuremberg was destroyed centuries ago. That must have happened by the early 1800s, but it could be earlier. We're also told by Donna Troy that the language found in the walls of Corey's storage unit in Titans has been lost for centuries, which also places that in the 1800s or an earlier time period. Then, according to Cyborg Patrol, around the turn of the last century, the early 1900s, the Bureau of Oddity was formed as a secret division of the government tasked with investigating the odd and unusual. In 1913, the Federal Reserve is built in Washington, D.C. In May, a group of Turkish hunters went on an expedition in the northern Yukon Territory. Only one man returned, telling stories of what he perceived to have been a monster sighting. 7 months later, the Bureau of Oddity sent Niles Calder and Agent Alistair to investigate. On December 4th, Niles was captured by the Monster, who brought him to the cave of Oyewa, where he found the decomposing bodies of the lost hunters. The two spent years with each other, and we get quick glimpses of flashbacks in 1914 and 1915. In 1916, Alistair returns to the northern Yukon Territory. Finding Niles, he's informed that the world is currently in the midst of World War I, and that the Bureau's mission has changed to extermination. Hoping that Niles would escort him to Oyewa, Alistair is left to drown. In order to protect his lover, Niles returns to Alistair's group and fabricates the story of his survival, leading to the Bureau accepting him back into their ranks. Returning to Cyborg Patrol, Larry tells us that sometime after World War I ended in 1918, the Bureau's mission changed again to containment, weaponization, and eradication. And here we hit our first continuity error. According to Mr. Nobody in Penultimate Patrol, Larry is 95 years old, so with that information, he should have been born in 1924. However, back in Cult Patrol, Larry tells us that he and his wife, Cheryl, were both in the graduating class of 1946 at Bishop John Carroll High School, which would make him 17 to 18 years old that year and place his birth date between 1928 to 1929.
What do you mean we're at a continuity error? Could Mr. Nobody have just been rounding up?
I suppose so, although 90 would have been a more accurate rounding. But it's not the end of the world, right? Right? I'll just keep moving. Some years later in 1930, we catch up with a young Gertrude Cramp. Having won the Cook County pageant, Gertrude's prize was a chance to meet Hollywood star Ethel Singer. Gertrude's parents introduced her to Ethel by her stage name, Rita Farr. We also know that the Brotherhood of Evil formed sometime in the 30s. Then in 1935, we see a young Larry Trainor overhear his parents discuss him being caught playing doctor with Benjamin Quincy behind the swing sets, resulting in an argument between the two in regards to Larry's sexuality. What's strange is that Larry should be around 6 or 7 here, based off of his high school graduation year. But based on the bio of the actor who plays young Larry, his acting career started at 8 years old, and with his first credit being in 2016, that would mean he's around 11 years old when this scene was shot, which is more in line with Mr. Nobody's estimation of Larry being 95 years old now. I'm just gonna keep going. Returning to Puppet Patrol, we're treated with the story of Heinrich von Fuchs, a scientist who was focused on enhancing the human body, recruited to work with the Nazi Party when World War II broke out in 1939. 7 years later, in 1946, Eric Morden was let go from the Brotherhood of Evil and was replaced by a French-speaking guerrilla, most likely Monsieur Mala. Typically speaking, when the Brotherhood fires someone, they kill them. But Morden was let off easy because they didn't find him to be a threat physically or intellectually. Finally coming to realize what a loser Eric is, his wife Millie left him, telling him, "You're just a nobody, and that's what you'll always be." And while we're here in 1946, as I brought up before, this is the year that Larry Trainor and his girlfriend Cheryl graduated from Bishop John Carroll High School. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein would be released 2 years later in 1948. Meanwhile, Eric Morden would find himself in Paraguay at the door of Heinrich von Fuchs, who would turn him into the villain that came to be known as Mr. Nobody. Next up, there's a flashback to 1950 in which we see a baby Kay Chalice being lorded over by her father in a way that's meant to come off as a bit menacing. Not a lot going on here, but it does lead us to our next continuity error, because in Paw Patrol, we get a pretty clear look at her hospital wristband, which suggests she was born May 9th, 1959.
What's even the problem here? That hospital bracelet's clearly on Crazy Jane, not Kay Chalice.
Well, they do share the same body.
But they're not the same person.
Okay, fine. I guess for now we'll just assume that's when her psyche split. If that's okay with you.
I'll allow it.
Also around this time, the original Doom Patrol was formed. While we don't have anything more conclusive than Cyborg telling us they were active in the early 50s, one of the pieces of microfiche he scans over has multiple visible 1953 dates, so it seems safe to assume that the team was active by then. Also in the early 50s, we learn that Rita Farr met 6-time Oscar-winning producer Gene Stanton. Having rejected Gene's advances, the two set up an arrangement for Rita to send him new upcoming actresses. A year after this arrangement began, the first girl won an Oscar. This arrangement continued up into 1954 when Gene impregnated Mary Beth Wooten. 9 months later, in 1955, she gave birth, but Gene didn't want to step up and become a father. Mary Beth came to Rita for help, but Rita simply gave her $100 and sent her on her way. A week later, the newspapers reported that Mary Beth had taken her own life. Rita momentarily considered taking care of the baby, but then her phone rang with an offer to play the lead in Forbidden Congo. While in Africa filming the movie, Rita had an accident on set. With none of the crew initially coming to her aid, she was left to flounder underwater momentarily until some unknown substance found its way inside her body, dramatically changing her body chemistry. But on a lighter note, also in 1955, the Doom Patrol's leader, Steve Dayton, codenamed Minto, would be determined to be the 5th richest man in America. Following Rita's accident, she attempted to return to showbiz in 1956, taking a meeting with Sidney Bloom, a producer for Bloom Pictures. Becoming aware that she would only get the job in return for sexual favors, Rita begrudgingly but quickly obliged this time. However, her anxiety caused her to lose control of her body's shape, and as a result, Bloom was smothered and killed. That same year, Kate, future wife to race car driver Cliff Steele, would be born on May 23rd. Jane Patrol returns us to the dynamic between Kay Chalice and her father. Now in 1957, this flashback hints at a sexually abusive relationship when her father menacingly enters her room asking for a kiss and insisting that he doesn't like to wait. Hey. In 1958, Rita Farr finally came to meet Niles Calder, who in turn introduced her to Minto of the Doom Patrol. Minto used his powers to help Rita quiet her mind so that she could better control her physiological makeup, and over their time together, the two began to date. But this was cut short when Minto read Rita's mind without her consent and found out about Mary Beth. Memorial Day that year, the Doom Patrol fought Mr. Nobody. Or perhaps it was 1959. Cyborg really only told us they were active until the late 50s. At the park, a hot air balloon shaped like a buttocks showed up and brought a jukebox along with it that only played Hot Diggity by Perry Como. The jukebox was equipped with a transformer ray that changed the police into piñatas. The crowds tore them open and ate the candy from the piñatas. When the Doom Patrol arrived, the jukebox split open and Mr. Nobody leapt out, followed by a herd of vinyl warriors. However, Mr. Nobody destroyed the Doom Patrol, turning them on each other by manipulating their fears. Over time, the group would become more and more volatile. As a result, Niles kept the group in their own house under a shared delusion created by Minto in order to keep the three heroes sedated. Then, on May 9th, 1959, it seems that Kay Chalice's personality began to split, creating Crazy Jane. This brings us to the 1960s. In January of 1961, My Greatest Adventure number 51 hit shelves. While this was a real-world run of comics, and coincidentally the run that introduced the Doom Patrol, it did differ in the show in that this issue featured an ad for a cereal called Mentallo's Sugar Flakes. Different from the real-world version, Flex Mentallo wasn't introduced until the real world's August 1990 in Doom Patrol number 35. We also get a quick flashback of Cliff's parents fighting sometime that year during Therapy Patrol. Later in 1961, we learn that Niles is still working with the Bureau of Normalcy. In an attempt to investigate a space anomaly that would come to be known as the Negative Spirit, Niles staged for an X-15 test flight that would intercept its path. This would put the plane's pilot, Larry Traynor, into the custody of Agent Forsyth. But Niles was playing the long game so that he could take over and have Larry as a test subject for the Immortus Initiative. About a week later, Larry was having an affair with his mechanic, John Bowers. Wanting to leave the Air Force, John asked Larry to come with him. Returning home, Larry and his wife had a brief argument in which Larry promised that he'll be better for her and the kids, a promise that Cheryl was quick to point out he'd failed to follow up on many times already. The following day, Larry piloted the test flight. After collision with the Negative Spirit, Larry became unresponsive and the plane fell back to Earth, leaving him with third-degree burns on his entire body and radiation poisoning. Larry was quickly transported to a hospital, but his radiation levels were off the charts, causing the death of the medical team working on him. He was placed in a solitary cell while recovering. In a state of hopelessness, Larry's wife left him, and shortly afterwards, he broke things off with John, despite Bowers having decided to stay in the Air Force with him. On February 22nd, 1963, Dwayne Wainwright was born. In the comics, Dwayne was a metagene-enhanced beach bum who went by the name Sudden Death and showed up in the Suicide Squad, Hawk and Dove, and Birds of Prey comics. But in this universe, he's just a creepy guy that the original Hawk and Dove beat up. But we'll get to that later. Also in 1963, Larry Traynor finally made his way to the ant farm, where tests were run in an attempt to harness the radioactive energy inside him. During his time there, Forsyth got a call from his higher-ups stating that the Red Menace was presenting itself as a threat in Havana, a mission that Forsyth told Larry he was required to be a part of. However, when his handlers entered the room to subdue Larry, the Negative Spirit made itself known to Forsyth. Around 1964, the soap opera Secret Hearts debuted, an Easter egg reference to a DC comic series that ran from 1949 to 1971. That year, Flex Mentallo thwarted an attempted robbery of the aquarium in Great Bend, Kansas, committed by Dr. Saucer, a villain with only one comic book appearance. Following this, Flex and his wife, Dolores, went on a picnic, but Flex was captured by the Bureau of Normalcy and brought to the ant farm. There, we learned that the Negative Spirit hadn't made itself known since the previous year, so Agent Forsyth began running tests that would agitate it and make it come out. Meanwhile, Flex now occupied the cell neighboring Larry's. He proposed an escape plan to him, but Larry was hesitant. Hoping to make it out, the Negative Spirit befriended Flex. However, the escape plan was thrown away when Agent Forsyth revealed that the Bureau also took Dolores captive, a move that not only was intended to keep Flex subdued, but also served as a means to capture any metas that would come looking for him. This would become known as the Dolores Project. Around this time, Niles put in a request for another test subject for the Immortus Initiative. This request wouldn't be filled until over a decade later. We don't know the exact year, but it's by 1966 at the latest. In 1966, though, John Grayson was born, and in 1967, his future wife Mary Grayson. In 1968, Agent Forsyth was informed that the custody of Larry Trainor was to be surrendered to Niles Calder for the Immortus Initiative. And by 1969, Minto had become so sedated by the group delusion he had put the Doom Patrol under that he wouldn't make a peep for the next 50 years. Between 1969 to 1974, Richard Nixon served as the President of the United States. During this time, the Bureau of Normalcy got pretty Looney Tunes, stuffing brains into everything, including, but not limited to, a super sarcastic toaster. In 1975, Melissa Roth was born, and in 1976, the punk band The Clash was formed. Also in 1976, Jane's 64 separate personalities were given their superpowers, and on New Year's Eve that year, Agent Forsyth interrupted a party at Doom Manor to inform Niles that the Bureau finally found a candidate for the test subject he had requested over a decade prior. In 1977, Jane was apprehended at a punk show after sneaking out of the Corpus Sanatorium. Following her return, Jane's alter ego Dr. Harrison took over and was met by a time-traveling Mr. Nobody. Over time, they developed the religion of the Recreator in order to combat the Decreator some decades in the future. Scheduled for a lobotomy at another facility, her transport driver turned out to be Niles Calder, who aided in her escape. Simultaneously, Mr. Nobody informed Dr. Harrison that once the Decreator fiasco was done and over with, he would need her to look for the Doom Patrol. In winter of 1978, Jane arrived at Doom Manor for the first time, meeting Rita and Larry. Niles seems to still be wearing the same outfit here that he was in when transporting Jane from Corpus Sanatorium, leading one to assume he met her New Year's Eve of 1977, and this is January 1st of 1978, suggesting it took a full year for Niles to obtain custody following his meeting with Agent Forsyth the prior New Year's Eve. Then, in 1979, a gay bar by the name of Rawhide opened up in John Bauer's hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania. Also that year, Melissa Roth is born.
You literally just said a minute ago that she was born in 1975.
Hey, don't get mad at me. I didn't write this stuff. We've got one news report in Titan saying she's 43 and another in Doom Patrol saying she's 39.
Doom Patrol doesn't even mention her.
Well, the DC Universe Easter egg blog says it's about her.
You seem to have a good point.
Are we gonna talk about this?
No, keep going. This is fun.
Now in the 1980s, we get a brief glimpse of Cliff and Kate Steele with their new baby Clara before Cliff became a famous race car driver. A bumper sticker that says 1983 Motorsports is visible at one point, which suggests that's the year Clara was born. Cliff reveals early on in Doom Patrol that her birthday is coming up, so with that show taking place in October, we can assume that Clara's birthday is October 1983. Shortly after this, Cliff rose to stardom and even had a guest appearance on Secret Hearts. In 1988, Cliff and Kate's marriage began to fall apart. Cliff started banging the nanny, Giselle, and Kate acted in kind, beginning an affair with a member of Cliff's pit crew named Bump. Cliff found out about this affair in the middle of a race, which nearly caused him to lose focus and crash, but Cliff pulled out in the lead, won the race, and assaulted Bump. Returning to his trailer that night, Cliff continued his affair with Giselle, and feeling guilty, drunkenly called Kate and promised to be better going forward. The two made amends, but driving home, they got into a car accident which killed Kate and nearly killed Cliff.
Now hold on a second here. I've been going through your old scripts and...
How did you get access to those?
Not important. Now, initially you had planned to do just a timeline on the first season of Titans. Probably should have, by the way. It would have been a much shorter video. And according to you, Cliff's sponsor Valstar didn't hit the mark until 1999. But here we are 11 years earlier.
Oh man, if you think that's a problem, just wait until we get to 2009. For now, it's probably just best that you accept that things won't line up 100% with real-world dates. Now, if you don't mind... Having recovered Cliff's body, a guilt-ridden Niles Calder met with Eleanor Stone and revealed that he was behind the crash. His original plan was for it to have happened at the racetrack with nobody else getting hurt. But when that went sideways, well, things went the way that they did. During this meeting, Eleanor learns about Niles' involvement with the Bureau of Normalcy and the Immortus Initiative. In 1989, Cheryl Trainor died of cancer. Now in the 90s, in 1991, two girls would be born, Melanie Dolan and another just known as Jen, that would later match with Cyborg on the Cash dating app. Later that year, on November 11th, Corey Anders was presumably born. This date is taken from a potentially fake passport, so it's worth noting that it should be taken with a grain of salt. 3 years later, on April 3rd, 1994, Melanie Dolan was born.
Wait, you just said she was born in 1991.
Well, we're told she's 28, but we see on her medical marijuana card that she was born in 1994.
Well, why can't she be both?
I mean, personally, I think she just lied about her age on the dating app, but I guess she can be both if you think Doom Patrol takes place in 2022, but we'll get to that.
You're making me start to think having you analyze these shows was a mistake.
Moving to 1995, Janice, another one of Cyborg's cash matches, was born. By September that same year, Cliff Steele began to regain consciousness inside of a robot built by Niles Calder. Niles explained the crash to Cliff, and shortly afterward, Rita dropped the news that only Cliff's brain was recovered. Over time, Larry assisted Cliff with his recovery. Finally finding the ability to walk, Cliff attempted to leave Doom Manor, but Niles revealed to him that his memory of crashing on the racetrack wasn't how this accident actually happened. Niles lied and told Cliff that he was the only survivor, which put him into a depression for years. In 1996, Vic Stone was born. 3 years later, in 1999, Jason Todd was born. And that same year, Chief Kincaid died on Secret Hearts. Fall that year, following an Elmond Hawks elementary school football game, Coach Vincent attempts to molest Don Hall under the guise of showing him the weight room. But Hank convinced Donnie to leave, facing the abuse in his place. Finally entering the 2000s, Bump officially adopted Claire Steele in 2001 when she was 18, and Elliot Patterson, who would come to be known as the Unwritten Book, was born. In 2002, Vic Stone met Niles Calder at the age of 6. Dawn Granger began a career of gymnastics, dance, and jiu-jitsu, and Larry Traynor gifted a racetrack to Cliff, which began to break him out of his depression. We see Elliot's first birthday, beginning the ceremony that turns him into the Unwritten Book. We also get a quick flashback of Vic and his mother at the hospital after Vic dislocates his shoulder from falling out of a tree. And then we end the year with the death of the Flying Graysons, a freak accident that was set up by Tony Zuko, burning their ropes with hydrofluoric acid at the orders of the Maroney crime family. In January of 2003, Dick's caseworker told him that his parents' death may have actually been a murder. Shortly after, the Grayson funeral took place, after which Dick and Clayton Williams, also known as Atlas the Strongman, discussed the possibility of Dick going to live with Bruce Wayne. Dick was taken to Wayne Manor and promptly ran away. Dick was returned to Bruce, but once again ran away, this time taking one of Bruce's cars for a joyride. After being returned to his caseworker yet again, Dick explained to her that he was trying to track down his parents' murderer. This was overheard by Bruce, who then took Dick in as the first Robin. An undetermined amount of time later, Dick considered quitting as Robin following a botched run-in with the Joker that led to a large amount of civilian casualties. However, when Wonder Woman came to Wayne Manor to discuss the issue with Bruce, she brought Donna Troy with her, who gave Dick a pep talk that convinced him to continue on. This is one of the few times we don't get a year marker for a flashback, but since the same actor is used as the 2003 Dick Grayson, one can assume it isn't that long after. In 2005, Rachel Roth was born. In 2007, Esme, a girl from Rita Farr's acting class, was born. And in 2008, Cliff finally begins to build the racetrack that Larry gifted him. That same year, we see Elliot's 7th birthday. In 2009, Rachel and her mother took refuge at St. Paul's Convent. Also in 2009, Hank and Donnie Hall become the first Hawk and Dove. The majority of the episode Hank and Dawn covers this, so rather than give a full episode recap, I'll just tell you that Donnie dies in a car accident and Dawn Granger comes in to become the second Dove. This all happens between April and May that year. However, there are a lot of continuity errors in this one.
We get it. There's an Assassin's Creed poster that's visible months before the artwork for the game was revealed, a Rolling Stones magazine cover, along with others from years into the future, and they're just playing that awful like a G6 song even though that wasn't out until 2010. But you just said that real world dates don't necessarily line up for things like that, so what else do you got?
Well, Hank says it's playoffs week, despite the fact that college football playoffs are held in December. And according to Donnie, Dwayne Wainwright was arrested for trying to pick up an 8-year-old girl and police sent him on his way. But earlier in the episode, Hank says that Dwayne was arrested for uploading graphic photos of a 10-year-old at a coffee shop.
Did they even try to make things consistent?
Right? In 2011, the manhunt for Tony Zuko began. In 2012, Jason Todd's Uncle Ray OD'd. In 2013, this motel owner's ex-husband left her. That same year, Rachel's birth mother was captured and tortured, and we get another flashback to Elliot's 12th birthday. In 2014, Cliff finally finished building the racetrack Larry gave him. Robin teamed up with Hawk and Dove for a bad guy beatdown despite Bruce having told him to stay away from them, and Tyler Hackett got married. He's one of the child abusers that that Dick takes down when he gets to Detroit. May 6th that year, Corey's passport was supposedly registered. June 13th, Vic Stone had an argument with his mother that led to a lab explosion. Oddly enough, the argument is sparked as a result of Victor's parents making him sit out for 3 weeks during the football season due to dropping grades. However, there are some obvious problems here.
Oh boy, here we go.
Based on Vic's Cash profile, we know that he's 18 years old by the time of this argument. And given that the typical high school senior is 17 to 18 years old, and we're in June already, we know we're post-graduation.
Well, maybe he's in college.
One could assume, sure, but even with the weird college football season that we got from Titans, we're in June and thus past playoffs and out of the season. Besides, what college students' parents control their extracurriculars like that?
I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm starting to get pretty annoyed here.
Right. Back to the timeline. Following the accident, only having the ability to save one of the two, Vic was rushed to Star Labs Experimental Surgical Center. While there, Niles offered to take Vic in to help him during the recovery. However, Eleanor had told Silas about the Immortus initiative before her passing, and understandably, Niles' offer was turned down. We learned from Silas that 3 weeks after the accident, which would land on July 4th, Vic still couldn't walk. Sometime afterward, Niles brought a lens to Silas to be used for Vic's eye. While there, Niles attempted to convince Vic to come to Cloverton eventually. In May of 2015, Hank and Dawn began dating. While living in the Congo during 2016, Gar Logan and many others contracted a rare disease from a primate. Niles Calder gained access to the medical tent, saving Gar while the other patients seemingly didn't make it. Meanwhile, Tony Zuko was finally arrested. Dick tracked Zuko down to dish out his own brand of justice. This put them in the middle of a shootout organized by the Maroney crime family. Rather than protecting Zuko, Dick allowed them to fill him with bullets. Sometime in 2017, Dick left Batman and didn't wear the Robin costume for over a year until coming to Detroit. Tyler Hackett was accused of multiple counts of battery and child abuse after his stepdaughter posted a picture of herself on Instagram with bruises and lacerations claiming that Tyler was responsible. And on November 6th, Corey visited St. Paul's looking for Rachel, flying out to Vienna the following day. By 2017 at the latest, Bureau of Normalcy agent Morris Wilson defected while on an operation to capture Danny the Street and became drag queen Maura Lee Corrupt. Early in 2018, Jason Todd became the new Robin, which is weird because we're told that GCPD hasn't seen Robin in over a year by the time Titan starts. April 24th, a Metropolitan father pleads not guilty to charges in an I-94 crash that led to 5 deaths, claiming that a naked man with a dog hit his car. On June 10th, a police report was filed on Tyler Hackett, who was under investigation for child abuse. However, he evaded the charges once again. On June 27th, an 11th grade girl was accused of stabbing a classmate with scissors after being bullied for reportedly seeing a flying girl outside her classroom window. September 15th, a dazed and confused Brazilian woman with glowing green eyes was found walking into traffic on a freeway in downtown Detroit. In October, Dick joined the Detroit Police Department, and on November 5th, Melanie Dolan was licensed her medical marijuana card. And this finally brings us to the present day of Titans Season 1. While the Doom Patrol article regarding the death of Melissa Roth is dated November 20th, the article we see in regards to her death in Titans is dated November 17th, and states that she was killed within the previous 24 hours. Knowing that she died after Rachel got home from school, and seeing that the article states her body was found at 10:45 a.m., we can conclude the show starts on November 16th. The first 4 episodes take place back to back over the course of 4 days, so by the time we meet the Doom Patrol, it's the 19th. By the way, some weird stuff happens here. We see the Chief bring in Shailene Lau, known as Fever in the comics, but she's never brought back up in Doom Patrol at all. Not too big of a deal. We're told that people come and go from Doom Manor as they please. However, we're also told that Doom Manor is on Danny Street, an obvious nod to Danny the Street, who's actually a character by the time we get to their show. But the big one here is that Chief specifically tells us Rita was in an institution for decades following her accident, and that he freed her. But as we've already laid out, they met 3 years after her accident. She does tell us in Francis Patrol that she once took a respite at Rock Haven Sanatorium in Glendale, and technically we don't know where she was between 1958 after she split with Minto and 1976 when we see her at the New Year's party at Doom Manor, but that time period still falls just shy of being decades. From there, things get a little bit more loose, but the rest of the season takes place over at least 5 more days, so things wrap up by the 24th at the earliest. Just like with the earlier episode that took place in 2009, I'm not recapping the whole show. You can just go watch it yourself. What I will tell you is that the season 1 finale ends with a Superboy and Crypto reveal, so maybe that April 24th news story is supposed to be in 2019 after the rest of the show rather than in 2018, since, you know, Dog and Naked Man are totally a Crypto and Superboy reference. Back to the minutia. On November 29th, the Detroit State Board votes to establish new metahuman laws that would protect normal people from property damage caused by crimes created or prevented by metas. According to the DC Universe blog, this is perhaps a reference to the show Powerless, which Alan Tudyk was also a cast member on, though it's not clear if it means that series is set in this world as well. On January 5th, 2019, Melanie Dolan's medical marijuana card expires, and on April 24th, again, a Metropolitan father pleads not guilty to charges in an I-94 crash that led to 5 deaths, claiming that a naked man with dog hit his car. Now in October, we get to the start of Doom Patrol. There are multiple references to this show happening in 2019, but oddly enough, the only time markers with dates attached to them place the show in 2018. And our 6-month gap in Ezekiel Patrol that would put us in April of 2020, well, the magazine Mr. Nobody is holding is dated April 2019. And then if you want to go back to Melanie Dolan, she's supposed to be 28, but according to her medical marijuana card, she was born in 1994. So are we actually in 2022 here?
These shows, they reference each other but contradict each other at the same time. They can't even keep themselves straight.
Would now be a good time to bring up that the showrunners have said that it's the same world, but separate continuities?
What does that even mean?
I don't know, man. You were the one who was talking all that meta crap earlier. I thought you'd be able to tell me.
This doesn't make sense. None of this makes any sense. These worlds can't go on like this. It's unstable.
Wait a second. You were here this whole time?
Yeah, but while you were rattling on, I started exploring, and it turns out we're not alone here.
Can you please put me down, Meow?
I am tired of this world. These people. I am tired of being caught in the tangle of their lives.